small steps to big ideas, language is at the heart of who we are. We talk it through, we hear you out, we write the words, we read out loud. It's finding the way, exploring new places, discovering new people, and making the difference. It's stories to hear, tales to tell, opening doors and opening minds. Don't just write, communicate. Don't just talk, discuss, debate. Announce yourself, make a noise, speak your mind, and prove your skills to the world. So spread your wings, expand your horizons. It's a big world out there, and this is your journey. With us, you'll be inspired, you'll be supported, you'll be your best. This is more than learning English. These are your hopes and dreams. We are Cambridge Assessment English, and we're here for every learner, every step of the way.
Good morning, and that's our promise from Cambridge English. For every learner, every step of the way, Cambridge English plans to support you. So that's the promise that Gujarat government also will bring to you on this bright Monday morning, that in every step of the way of English. Morning, ma'am. Welcome, Manasi, ma'am. That's the thing about the SCOPE project, that every step of your way, we will be able to support you with English language and English certification from the world-renowned University of Cambridge. And that's the promise that the SCOPE project was founded on way back. I think the first state government initiative of this nature. And today we are happy to present to you it in its much developed and more very clear format that we are able to bring it to you. We are bringing out webinars for students across Gujarat who have been locked in because of the current situation. We are bringing in presentations on different topics. We've already had a presentation on negotiating skills. Then we had one on CV writing and interview skills. And then we had a third one on email etiquette. And today, a very interesting topic, presentation skills. How do you make presentations? Is this important only for students? No, even for teachers. It is very important. So just to give you all a small brief about it and to welcome you, I invite Manasi ma'am onto the platform. And Manasi ma'am is the joint CEO of SCOPE, and she has been with us on every occasion over the last 3 days. So ma'am, hopefully you had a nice weekend, and welcome on board to this. And I'm sure our students are all excited. Please say a few words, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. Very good morning to all of you. I welcome you all on behalf of SCOPE, Society for Creation of Opportunities through Proficiency in English, and Education Department, Government of Gujarat. On the moment of this webinar series, this is the 4th day. We have acquired so many skills regarding negotiating skills, email writing, CV writing, and interview skills. Now today is a presentation skills we are going to learn. Today, Ian Cowley will give new ideas how to make a presentation effectively. So I would like you to imagine a situation when you are given a task by your teacher or by your boss to make a presentation. How do you feel? Maybe you are confused, or the situation in that you would like to go under the bed. And in that situation, you may feel challenged, nervous or anxious, or do you feel hiding under the bed? Like, this situation happens. Even we faced when we were young in college, though we didn't have that computer system and PowerPoint presentation at that time, but we have to give our seminars. So it's a kind of presentation. So at that time, I felt like to hide myself behind some student and don't want to show my face to my teacher. So this happens to everyone, yeah, in everyone's life, even in student life or in professional life. But after a certain time, when you know how to give a effective presentation. After certain experiences, you will come to know these are the points you should keep in mind, and the phobia will be far away from you. So some points are that you should keep in mind, that your communication should be clear, right? So people will not look at the presentation, how the slide is looking, though they are giving attention to the slide and what type of color you are using and fonts you are using. But the main thing, how you are presenting those slides, right? So first 10 minutes are very important and crucial for a presenter. If you gain confidence in those minutes, you will win the race. So be clear, make your communication very clear. Then you should think, what are the audience, right? So keep in mind the expectation of audience also. And what are the presentation should be your brief, relevant to the point, and objective should be very much clear, so that the audience can give you attention. You should be crystal clear. You need to research the data, and it is not like that you have researched the data and you are directly putting in the slide, but you have to analyze it, edit it, and make it polished. A presentation should hold the attention of audience. So logically, it should be very much structured. You have to present yourself, your slides. It should be very effective. And today we are going to have Ian Cowley, who will give us more ideas, latest ideas, and will show us how to make a presentable, effective presentation, right? So I welcome you all, and thank you for joining. And don't forget to give a feedback at the end of the webinar. So Joshua, should we start now?
Yes, ma'am, you reminded me something of my young days when we didn't have PowerPoint. We used to use OHP with those
Yes.
transparent slides. You remember? And
Yes.
If your hand is wet, it will disappear.
Yes.
And you get scared. And so I remember,
Yes.
I mean, immediately it came back, how sweaty our palms would get. And, you had to be very
Yes.
careful.
Because we feel sweat on our hands when we are going to present ourselves. Those days were like that. We have kind of phobia how to present.
Absolutely.
Even right now, the students are facing such problems. That's why we are here, and we are making our best to solve their problems and to enhance their skills, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
We hope this will be useful, and I'm sure Ian comes from the same school as us. So
Yes.
over to Ian now.
Yeah, thank you.
So, hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar about presentation skills. Before I start, I just wanted to give you some more information. We have 3 more webinars that are going to be taking place next week. We're going to be looking at business etiquette, negotiation skills, and preparing for work. And for those of you who are able to attend all the webinars, including the one that we had earlier this week and the one that we're having today, you will receive a certificate of attendance from us. So, let's begin. Today's presentation is all about presentation skills. And before I started, I wanted to show you an example of a question taken from the Beck qualifications. And you can see here that this is a task that's taken from the reading part of the exam. And this is all about presentation skills. So everything that I'm going to tell you today is going to be very useful for you in improving your presentation skills and hopefully improving your skills for the world of work. But also, these are skills that you're going to learn as part of your Beck qualifications. So let's have a look at what we're going to be doing today. We're going to start by talking about how we plan presentations before we deliver them, and then how we prepare for presentations, and then finally how we deliver them. So first of all, let's look at planning for a presentation. When you're preparing for a presentation, it's really important that you think about these 3 factors. First of all, you've got to think about why are you delivering the presentation? This is really important because it could be a presentation that you're delivering for some colleagues, or it might be for customers. You have to bear that in mind. You also have to think about who your audience is. Who are you presenting to? And once we know this information, it may well change the way that we deliver it. It might change some of the information we provide. And also, we need to think carefully about the structure of the presentation and how we develop that. So, here on this slide, we can look at some of the different reasons why you would deliver a presentation. It could be to instruct. So it might be that you want to deliver some training to customers on a technical issue, for example. It might be that you need to inform. So you might be delivering a business case to a senior management team. You might want to inspire or motivate. So if you're delivering a presentation to students, for example, at school or at university, you might be looking to activate or stimulate people, and you do that through a team talk, for example. You might want to persuade, and that would be a presentation that you deliver to a customer. Or it may be that you wish to entertain. It might be something nice that you want to do on a Friday afternoon with your colleagues. Once we've thought about the purpose, it's really important that we think about these three issues. So first of all, how many people are you going to be presenting to? If you're presenting to a small number of people in a room, it's a very different experience from having a large auditorium with many hundreds of people. The more people you have, the more difficult it is to run interactive activities or discussions during the presentation. So you might need to think about that when you're preparing. It's also really important to think about who you are presenting to, because the audience is really important, and depending on who the audience is, your presentation will be different. So for example, if you are giving a presentation to the senior management team at the company where you work, the way that you present, the style, the information will be different from if you're giving a presentation to a group of colleagues in your team. We also have to think about whether we're going to be delivering to customers, for example, because again, that would be very different from an internal presentation. And then you have to think about why they are there. What kind of information do they want from the presentation? And this is really important, because if you prepare a presentation which does not answer the questions or the need of the audience, then it's going to fail. So it's really important that you understand why they want this presentation. Another factors that you can think of is who has sent them to the presentation. Have they come by themselves, or have they been sent by their company or their organization? What's their mood like? Are they positive? Has something difficult happened at the company? Do you have to address that as part of the presentation? So there's lots of things that you need to consider when you're thinking about your audience and the effects that will have on your delivery. So let's have a look at the structure and the outline of a presentation. So you can see here that we start with an opening, and the opening would normally be an introduction, who you are, why you're here, why you're giving the presentation, and potentially the topics that you will cover as part of that presentation. And then you will break it down into sections. So you might have a different topic that you want to discuss in part A, and then again in part B and part C. You can have as many different topic areas as you like, but you need to structure them nicely. And then you finish by closing the presentation. And this would normally be a conclusion, summarizing everything that you've discussed. You will also give your thanks to the audience for their attendance. And you might want to give them some more information as to where they can find contact details, etc., within the organization. This is a really important acronym for you to remember. So it says, proper preparation prevents presentation predicaments. And what that really means is that if you prepare properly, if you think about who your audience are, if you think about what their needs are, if you think about ensuring that the presentation fits with their needs and with the culture of the organization and with the culture of the participants, then you're going to stand a really good chance of succeeding. So, when we're preparing for a presentation, we need to think of these three areas. The content of it, so what exactly is the information that we are putting into our presentation, the visuals that we use as part of the presentation, and the format and layout. And these are really important factors because we want to make our presentation interesting for the participants who are listening. We want it to be informative, and we want them to leave with a good impression of both you as a presenter and the organization and the topic that you're presenting about. So let's think first of all about the use of visuals when we create a presentation. And here are some examples of the different kinds of visuals or activities that you might want to use. So starting at the top here, we've got a video. And you can certainly embed a video into your presentations, but there are some things that you need to consider. First of all, the video needs to be really relevant to the message that you're giving, because otherwise, what's the point of showing it? You could just give the information yourself. It has to provide more than you are able to present. Videos should be used sparingly. I wouldn't use more than one video in a presentation, and the video should be of a short length. 1 or 2 minutes is about enough, I think. I think anything longer than that, and the audience may become disinterested.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
So do use videos, but use them sparingly and make sure they are both relevant and short. We can also use pictures. You can use pictures to great effect in presentations. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, a picture tells 1,000 words, and that's true. They can be visually pleasing, they can stimulate the audience, but they have to be relevant and they have to be of good quality. You can also put in some quotes. Quotes are very good. I often use them when I'm giving a presentation to customers, and the quotes could be quotes from customers who are very happy about the products that you are presenting. So it gives those in the audience reassurance that there are other people who like the products, or they could be inspirational quotes if you're giving a presentation or as part of a training course, for example. Facts and figures are also very important, and we can demonstrate those using lots of different methods. We can use tables and different types of charts. We can make them interactive. But facts and figures are very important, especially if you're giving technical presentations or presentations related to sales, for example, or accounting, things like that. Make sure that the facts and figures are easy to understand, are clearly laid out, and of course, if need be, you can spend some time describing them so that they help to reinforce the message that you're giving to the audience. Charts and graphs, exactly the same as facts and figures. And finally, one thing that you can use here, we've used the word story. So I would use in a business context, I would take this as meaning a case study. So often, if I am describing something that's quite difficult, something quite technical, I give a case study as an example to the audience so that they can understand more about what the product does. You could also use other types of stories to relay your message, but again, make sure that your stories or your case studies are very good. Make sure that you know them inside out and you're able to speak about them in a confident and clear manner. So it says here that visual aids are a supplement to the presentation, not a substitute. And what that means is that we can use visual aids such as graphs and photos to help us to convey our message, to make our presentation interesting and attractive to the audience. But they alone do not make a good presentation, and they alone will not interest your audience. It's the way that you use those pictures and diagrams, etc., during your presentation to make it interesting and stimulating. So, using visuals. We should use them to make important points. So for example, if you want to show something related to the sales performance of the business and you want to pick up on the point that the business has done very well and the sales are increasing over a certain period of time, certainly you would show a chart showing this clearly, and then you would use it to talk around the point. You should put one major idea on each slide. We're going to look a little bit later about how the presentation slides should look, but one really important rule is that you should only put one main idea on one slide, and the reason for doing that is that we want the audience to be clear. We want them to understand exactly what we're showing on that slide, and certainly less information is better than too much information. And then the charts should be large. They should be large enough for people to be able to see clearly. So again, think about your audience, think about how many people are going to be there, think about where you're going to be presenting and the technical and audiovisual equipment that you will have available, and make sure that everything that you have prepared can be seen clearly on screen. And then finally, it's really important that you proofread everything carefully, because when you've got people watching your presentation, they're going to be looking at your slides in quite a lot of detail and potentially for a few minutes, and they will pick up on any errors that you've put in there. And it's really important that we don't have any errors, because if we do, it gives a bad impression of you and it gives a bad impression of the organization. So, looking at the format and layout, this slide is a really good example of how we can use colors and pictures effectively. So you can see that there are quite a number of colors here, but none of them stand out too much. They all fit together quite nicely. The use of words on this slide has been used sparingly, but it's very clear to understand what it is. And also you can see that by the words that have been chosen, we've pulled out the important points that we want to get across in the presentation. So this is a really nice example of how you can use a visual with some good colors and some use of words sparingly to get your message across in a good way. So, what to keep in mind when we're preparing our slides? Let's read this sentence together. It's quite complicated. It is imperative that one attempts to restrict the complexity of the language utilized to convey one's ideas, lest the audience is bewildered by the ramifications of the expression. Well, this is just a little joke here. And basically what we're trying to show here is that the language that's been used, that sentence, the way it's been constructed, is not a good example of how you would want to present to the audience. What we're basically saying here, using this very complex language, is that we need to keep the presentation simple. We need to display our ideas in a very simple and straightforward way so that the audience is able to understand what it is that we're trying to say. Being too clever, trying to use language that perhaps the audience won't understand, or trying to present topics in a way that you think might be academically challenging is of no use to the audience at all. It's much better to be clear and simple with your approach and the way that you present the information. Less is definitely more when it comes to preparing presentations. So let's look at the structure. As I've said before, we need to keep it simple. Use language that's clear and understandable to the audience. Don't use any words or phrases that are too technical, or words and phrases that are too long, or the meaning is too difficult for them to understand. Make sure that your presentation is not cluttered. And what I mean here is that we don't use too many colors, we don't use too many images, we don't put too much information on each slide. Remember, I said before we should try to keep one main topic per slide. Use clear and readable fonts. I would suggest that you only use 1 or 2 fonts. You can see on this slide, I've got a larger font for the title and a smaller font for the text underneath. It wouldn't help if I used a font which isn't clear, or it wouldn't help if I used fonts that were all mixed up. So, 2 or 3 different fonts, that's not a good idea either. And of course, using color with your text is also not a very good idea unless you have a really good reason and you want to highlight something. Don't have too many diversions in your presentation. So what that means is let's not have too much animation going on. That can detract from the message that you're trying to get across. I mentioned before, if you're going to have a video, perhaps keep it to 1 and keep it quite short. And then you shouldn't have more than 6 points per slide. Again, we don't want the slides to be cluttered. We want the information to be clearly available for the audience to understand. And that's why we keep it to no more than 6 points, and using bullet points like I have done here is a really good way of doing that. You can always have lots more information in the notes section of the presentation so that you can refer back to those when you're presenting. It's much better to put all the information you want to say in the notes so that you can see it, but then keep the bullet points on the slides nice and short and succinct so that the audience can understand what it is that you want to say. So, thinking about the format and the layout specifically on written slides, and we've looked at some of these areas before. So let's think about fonts. Well, I mentioned that we shouldn't really use more than 2 fonts. Normally I use 1, but I change the size of the font for the title and then for the text. You can use more than 1, but keep it to a minimum, because again, it's all about making sure that your message is clearly understood. As I mentioned before, you can use colors in your presentation, but make sure you use them sparingly and think about your audience. So for example, if you're giving a presentation to your work colleagues, it might be okay to make it a little bit brighter and more fun. But if you're giving a presentation to the corporate board or to an important customer, you're not going to be using humor or visuals to try and get your message across. It's important that you keep the colors to a minimum, but use them in a way that's attractive and interesting to the audience. The third point is an interesting one about paragraphs. Well, I mentioned that we should try to keep the information on each slide to a minimum, 6 bullet points as a maximum. We shouldn't be using paragraphs at all. You don't need to put a paragraph into a presentation, because what are you going to do? You're just going to read it off the screen. It'd be much better to summarize that paragraph, learn what it is that you want to say, and then do so. It's really important that your main ideas are clearly displayed. And as I said before, we should have just 1 main idea per slide. Anything more than that, and your message will be lost, and potentially the audience could be confused. And finally, as I mentioned before, bullet points are really good. It helps you to keep your sentences to a minimum, and it also helps you get ready for the next bullet point, what you need to say next in the presentation, so it helps you to plan what you're going to say. So let's think about some of the things which are best avoided in a presentation. Well, you can see on this slide, there's an awful lot of colors here. Again, it might be fine to use those colors if your audience is a classroom of school children, for example, but you wouldn't want to use a presentation like this with senior colleagues or customers. Also, you can see here that we've used a number of different fonts in the presentation slides. We've got best avoided in the presentation, all sorts of different fonts there. That's really not a good idea at all. And then the picture and the title don't really go together. You've got best avoided in presentation, and then you've got a picture of some confused people. So I don't think the picture conveys a very good message of the audience here at all. So, as I said before, please don't make bad color choices. Loud or garish colors are not a good idea unless your audience would like them, an audience of school children, for example. Don't put dark text on a dark background, or equally, don't put light text onto a light background, because if you do that, the audience isn't going to be able to read what you've said. And it's very important that they can read everything clearly. They don't want to have to struggle and you know, look hard to understand what it is on the screen. And then also try to avoid colorblind combinations, or in fact any combination that may create noise for the eyes of those attending the presentation. We need to keep everything clear and simple. So please don't make those bad color choices. Okay, so let's have a look at this slide. There's quite a lot of things wrong with this. So first of all, there are far too many pictures here. I said that we should use pictures sparingly, and they should help you in your presentation and to make it interesting for the audience. But the presentation slide that we can see here, there's far too many images. There's all different kinds of images. We've got photos, we've got cartoons, we've got other things. It really creates a lot of noise for the customer, for those who are attending the presentation. So keep those slides very clear and simple. And some rules here. Use pictures, but don't let them use you. This is really important. Pictures are there to help you, to stimulate you, and to stimulate the audience. Okay, they shouldn't be the most important part of the presentation. Keep them simple. I've said this again and again. It's so important. Okay, too much can divert the audience away from what you're trying to say. So if your pictures are too interesting, or you've tried to put something funny on the screen to you know, to add a bit of humor, and it takes away from your message, that's not a good idea. And it says too many pictures could also make saving a presentation difficult. This is a really important point. In my own experience at the moment, because of the situation we find ourselves in, I'm delivering lots of presentations and webinars from home, and I have to send those webinars to my colleagues around the world. If I've got too many pictures, too much video content, it makes it difficult to send those presentations. It also makes it difficult to load them up, for example, for today. And we don't want that. We want it to be clear, simple, easy to use. So bear all those things in mind. Okay, so now we're going to go on to talk a little bit more about how we deliver a presentation. And I'm sure you are familiar with this gentleman, Mr. Steve Jobs from Apple. And I think this is a really good picture, because Mr. Jobs is giving a presentation here, and look at his body language. So we know that he's describing something. He's very open. He's using his hands. I've been using my hands a lot today as well. You probably can't see them because of the webcam, but I've been using my hands all the time to explain. He's got a very open posture. He looks confident. He looks like he really knows what his subject is, and he's comfortable with the audience. And this is really important. Okay. So these are some really important things that you need to consider, because when you're giving the presentation, all eyes are on you, and it's really important that you're able to deliver that presentation in a confident way. So we need to think about body language. Now, when you're delivering presentations like I am today on a webinar, your body language isn't quite as important because I'm sitting down. You can just see the top half of my body and sometimes me moving around. But when you're giving a presentation in front of people, your body language is really important. Think about your posture, how you stand. Think about how you use your hands, okay? It's very important that you project a confident image, an approachable image, and you represent the company in a good manner. So your body language is very important. Don't slouch, don't hunch your shoulders, don't put your hands in your pockets, don't kind of keep touching or scratching your head, or if you're nervous, don't do any of those things. You need to be confident, good posture, good use of hands, give a great impression to the audience. Your grooming is also really important. Nowadays, office environments are far less formal than they used to be. I always used to wear a suit and tie to work. Now I find myself wearing an open collared shirt and a nice pair of trousers. But you need to think about who your audience is. You know, if you're going to present to a very important customer, you probably still want to wear a business suit. If it's Friday afternoon in the office and it's a dress down day, you'll just be in your jeans and t-shirt, and that's okay if you're presenting to your colleagues. Also think about the way you look. If you have a beard like me, make sure that it's well trimmed. Make sure your hair is in good shape. You are representing your company. You need to give a good impression to the audience. Therefore, you need to think about your grooming. Eye contact is a really good one, and one that I'm often asked about. And I've got a few techniques here that you can use. It is important that your audience understands that you are maintaining contact with them. And it's also good for you because you can gauge the opinion of the audience. How are they reacting to your presentation? Are they bored? Are they interested? Did they find something funny? Do they look like they want to receive more information? So you need to keep eye contact, but it can also be uncomfortable to look straight into somebody's eyes. So there are two things I do. What you can do is focus on a space on the person's forehead just between their eyes. And by doing that, when you're looking at them, it looks like you're looking them in the eye, but you're actually looking just above their eye line. And you can flick between the spot in between their eyes and their eyes up and down like that. That's a really good way of maintaining eye contact and it not being too uncomfortable. The other thing that you can do is, if somebody is talking, is move your eyes between their eyes and their mouth, sort of up and down between the two. And again, it means that you're maintaining contact with them, but you're not looking into their eyes all the time, but you can clearly understand what they're saying, and they know that you are interested in what you're saying as well. So that's important. Then thinking about your voice, okay, this is really, really important. And it's so simple. Think about it this way. When you are projecting your voice to a room of people, you want to make sure that they can understand what you're saying clearly, that you are able to speak with confidence, and that you're able to project your voice. In some cases, you might be given a microphone to talk with, but again, it's equally important that you understand how to use that microphone, okay? You can't shout into a microphone. You can't have it too close to your mouth, because if you do, then it will pick up sounds as you speak. So make sure that you speak slowly, clearly, you're able to project your voice well, and that you sound confident. Something else to consider with your voice and how you project is whether the audience are made up of people whose first language is English, if indeed you are going to be giving your presentation in English, or whether their English proficiency level might not be very good, in which case you need to speak more slowly, more clearly, and stop regularly so that you can check that they've understood what you've said. So thinking about some of the delivery do's and don'ts, okay, I said it's really important that you bear in mind that you are projecting the image of the company, and so it's very important that you act in the correct manner. Do introduce yourself, do speak clearly, do have positive body language, do look confident, make sure that your grooming is right for the audience, okay? Don't slouch, don't put your hands in your pocket, don't hide behind a rostrum if there is a rostrum. Think about who the audience is. Think about your pace, the speed of your speech. Make sure that it's interesting. And also, one thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is the use of humor and jokes as part of a presentation. My advice would be very, very careful with how you use humor in a presentation. If it works well, it can be very successful and it can help you to gain the trust of your audience. But if it doesn't work, then it's an absolute disaster and you will lose your audience. So I would say, please don't go into a presentation thinking that you're going to tell jokes and make humorous comments. Okay, play it as straight as you can. If during the course of the presentation and you gauge the audience reaction and you think that it might be okay to make perhaps one humorous comment, do so and see what the reaction is. If the reaction is not great, certainly don't do it again. But always be really careful with humor, okay? More often than not, it will fail. So my advice would be, don't do it. Okay, so now I talked a little bit about the importance of body language. And what we have to think about is both the body language of you, the presenter, and also the audience as well. So, for example, if you are the presenter and you are giving some quite difficult information, perhaps it's something, perhaps the sales figures are not looking particularly good this year, or maybe the company's had to close some of its offices, for example. If you're giving that kind of advice, don't stand there, you know, with a smile beaming from ear to ear. Your body language should reflect the importance of the message that you're giving across. The other thing that you should do, and the second picture here, you can see that the guy, he doesn't look very neat and tidy. He's looking at the clock. You know, he doesn't really want to be in the room. It's very important that when you give your presentation, you are giving all your time to the audience. You have to make them feel like this is the most important place in the world and there's nowhere else you would rather be at that time. Trying to rush through the presentation, looking at the clock, you know, having problems with your notes, not being able to get the slides to work. This is all very bad and gives a very bad impression. Okay, so make sure that you give the audience all of your attention, that you're well prepared and you know exactly what you're going to be delivering. In the third picture here, you can see that this gentleman looks bored. Remember that the audience is going to react to the way that you present. So if you look bored and disinterested, so will they. But if you come into an auditorium full of people and they don't look particularly interested, don't be scared. See that as a challenge, because through your energy and through your delivery, you can turn that audience from one that's not particularly interested to one that's going to be eating out of your hand by the end of the presentation and listening to every word that you say. So make the audience feel that they are valued and that they are important, and make sure that your body language is correct for the message that you're giving across and that you are reflecting the values of your company. Okay, so these are some good things that you should do. So smiling certainly gives the impression that you're friendly. What I try and do is when I come into the presentation room, if there are some members of the audience already there, I go and talk to them. I smile, I shake their hand, I tell them who I am, I ask them who they are. And then by doing that, you've got some friends in the audience already. So it doesn't matter how many people are there, you've already spoken to some people, you've made a contact with them. They've seen you smile, they know that you're a human and you know that they are a human as well. And that can really help to calm any nerves that you might have before the presentation. It's always a good idea to nod when somebody else is speaking. And by doing this, it means that you've understood that they're talking, you're listening attentively to what they're saying, and it gives them a good impression of you as well. And as I mentioned, I've already talked about eye contact. It's important that we appear confident. It's important that the audience know that we're engaged with them. But as I said, there are some techniques that you can use if you feel uncomfortable looking people in the eye, and you certainly shouldn't stare at anyone or look into their eyes for too long, because that will concern them. Okay, so these are some examples of bad body language. If you remember when we saw that picture of Steve Jobs a few slides ago, he was stood, great body language. He had his arms out in front, welcoming and warming to the audience. If you cross your arms or you cross your legs, you immediately look defensive. Don't do that. Keep your arms by your side or use them to explain things, as I'm doing now, but don't cross your arms or your legs. And the same with fidgeting hands, tapping feet, touching your face, scratching. You know, these are all examples of how somebody appears nervous or bored to the audience. And remember that the audience reflects you, your values. If you're looking nervous and bored, then they're going to feel that as well. Okay, so here are some really good examples of postures. So you can see in the picture here at the in the top left-hand corner, the lady is standing. She has good posture. She has her hands out, similar way to Steve Jobs. That's a great example of how you should present. The next picture is quite interesting because we've got three different characters here. This is a political debate, I believe. And you can see on the left-hand side, the gentleman, he stood, has good posture. He's looking at the audience. He appears to be confident. Whilst the other two members, they're standing on one leg. They're having to look down at their notes. They don't have such an aura of confidence as the other character. And then down at the bottom here, these are three really bad examples. So hands on hips, pointing at the audience, not a good idea. As we said, crossing your arms makes you look cross or uninterested. And the third one, when you've got the hands on your hips, also doesn't make you look very interested at all either, and maybe a little bit cross. So avoid those. Positive posture, use your arms, stand straight, be confident. So, as I've said before, proper posture conveys confidence and authority, and that's what the audience want to see from you. Let your audience know that you're in charge and that you want to connect with them. So, I'm often asked whether it's okay to stand or whether we should sit or stand when we're giving a presentation, and whether we should walk around or not. And I think that all of these are possible, but it really depends on the presentation that you're giving. So for example, I always try to stand at the beginning of the presentation when I'm introducing myself and using the slides. However, there might be a point during the presentation when you would like the audience to discuss something or to think about something. And it's at that point that I sometimes go and sit down, because that signals to the audience that I want them to interact with each other and that I'm going to take a step back. So in that situation, it's okay to sit down, but I wouldn't sit down in front of an audience normally, because how are you going to show your confidence? How are you going to use your body language, your posture, your gestures to convey confidence? So stand up most of the time, but if you're giving a discussion or you want them to, they are discussing, or you want them to think about something by themselves, that's a good opportunity to sit down. And walking around or not, it's a really good one here. I do walk around during presentations, but it's important that you don't do it too much. Imagine your audience are watching a game of tennis, and if you're moving around all the time, they've got to follow you like this. Could become quite exhausting after a while. So don't move around too much, but you certainly can. If you've got a large auditorium, you could move to the front of the stage, or you could move stage left or stage right, so that you can give that part of the audience your attention. And being slightly active, also helps the audience to stay focused on the presentation. If you're just stood still all the time in the middle and you're using a very monologue voice when you're talking, or maybe you're mumbling, gives a very bad impression. It's going to make your presentation very boring. Use your energy, activate your energy, and that will activate the energy of the audience. Your voice is also very important. And I would suggest that when you're delivering a presentation remotely, as I am today, delivering a webinar, your voice is even more important. The best way to think about this is think about when you're listening to the radio, and think about the way that the radio presenter uses their voice, okay? Their voices are always interesting. They use different intonation, different pitches, different tempos, so that you are engaged with their voice, okay? You shouldn't speak too quickly or too slowly. I mentioned that if your audience perhaps do not all speak the language that you're delivering the presentation in very proficiently, you might want to slow down your delivery. But you don't want your delivery to be so slow that it becomes monotone and boring. As I said before, there's nothing worse than hearing someone present using just one kind of voice and really slowly, and then you'll just fall asleep. You don't want that to happen. So use your voice, make it energetic. Don't use too many fillers. And by fillers, I mean, yeah, you know, right, and then, yep, and that's what I think, so, you know, don't use those words. It's confusing to the audience. You want to project the image of confidence, so don't use too many fillers. What you can do, which is a good way of practicing, is either record yourself giving the presentation or have a colleague in the room when you're doing a practice presentation, and then they'll be able to tell you, do you use any fillers that perhaps you're not aware of? Is your voice a bit too monotone? Do you need to speak up? Practice. Practice always makes perfect. So, as I said, be wary of using the same phrases again and again. Clearly pronounce the words that you're using. Use stress if you want to make an important point. And you can also use pause and silence for effect. Let me give you a good example of this. Let's say that you are giving a presentation and you've asked the audience to discuss something and the room's getting quite noisy and you'd like to start again. Instead of shouting to everybody, okay, everyone, be quiet, please, we're going to continue. I move to the front of the room. I stand quietly and stilly, smiling, looking at the audience, and they soon pick up on the fact that the presenter isn't talking. And if the presenter isn't talking, perhaps they don't need to talk either. And that's a really good way of quietening down the audience, and it stops you from having to shout. And if you're giving a presentation, you want to keep your voice in good condition. You don't want to be shouting too much. So, when you speak, as we've said, you need to articulate what you want to say clearly. You can use pauses for effect. You can emphasize particular points using your voice. And it's also really important that you check the volume of what you're saying so that everyone can hear it clearly. I gave an example before of a radio presenter and how they use their voice and they modulate and they use intonation. Also, a great example is a political speech. Have a listen to some of our big political leaders from around the world and see how they use all of these, especially pausing, to give great effect when they're talking. Okay, so now we're going to think about our delivery and how we do it and whether we should read notes or not. So the first thing I should say is that if you're just going to be reading the whole presentation out on a piece of paper, it's going to be incredibly boring for the audience, and they're going to understand that actually you're not engaging with them at all. You're just looking at the piece of paper and you're reading it out. That's not a presentation, that's a speech, and that's not going to work very well. However, I also understand that we don't always give presentations where we're 100% familiar with the topic, or perhaps we haven't given the presentation before. As I said, practice always makes perfect. So the more times you give the same presentation, the easier it is. But if it's the first time, you might want to prepare some confidence cards. So these are different from having a whole page of notes. Each card will have a few bullet points on. Each of those cards will be related to a slide in the presentation, and you can use them if you just want to quickly gather your thoughts and make sure that you don't miss any important points. So you will still be using the presentation slides to talk, but you'll have these cards available with a few sort of points on there, and you can use them to support what you're saying. However, if you are going to be using cards, there are some things you need to remember. Remember that you're going to have to take the card and put it down and use the next one. So make sure the cards are all in the correct order. The worst thing that could happen is if you rely on confidence cards and they appear in the incorrect order. So you must make sure that they're all there. And then you can use them, and you should practice with them before you make the presentation. Okay, so you can see here you should refer to them, don't read them, put only the important points as I mentioned. And also something that's really important is that the confidence cards should be made out of card, not paper. Why? Well, card makes less noise if you're moving between one card and the next, and paper, it's easy to bend, fold. You can get them in the wrong order more easily. If you use card, it's much simpler to keep them all in one place at one time. So also, it's really important during your presentation that you rewind and recap what you're saying. So appropriate phrases should be used by the presenter when you're making those presentation slides. We've mentioned that. But let's have a look at some of these other things and whether you agree with these statements or not. So the first statement, certainly we agree with that. It is appropriate to use pauses. How about this second one? Is it okay to put your hands in your pocket while making a presentation because it looks cool? No, you must never put your hands in your pockets while you're making a presentation. It doesn't look cool at all, and it gives a terrible impression. Multicolored slides look attractive. Well, we've said that you can use some color in your presentations, but don't use lots and lots of colors. Don't use colors which clash. Don't use dark colors on top of dark colors. Let's have a look at this one. It's okay to use this in your slide. After all, everybody knows it. No, you must never do anything like that. You know, your slides need to be accurate, clear, good use of fonts, bullet points. You don't want to use anything like that. I mean, I can't even read that very well. So no, you must make sure that everything is clear and concise. Video clips and images can make presentations interesting. That's absolutely true, but make sure that the video clips and images are not used too much. So, as I said before, one video per presentation is okay. You can use some pictures. They can be very helpful, but they should help you to tell the story. They shouldn't control you. Lots of information and paragraphs should be displayed on the slides. No, remember, we want to make the slides as clear and simple as possible. No more than 6 bullet points, certainly no paragraphs. Complex and complicated sentences and language make a great impression on the audience. No, absolutely not. In fact, the complete opposite. Don't use any complex language you feel the audience might not understand. It doesn't make you look clever, okay? One should dress keeping the audience in mind. Absolutely. As I said, office attire has changed over the years, but we have to dress appropriately to the audience. If you feel that the audience requires a business suit, then wear one. Okay. If it's okay to wear casual clothing because of the audience, that's all right as well. But you really need to think about it. Let's have a look at, so let's carry on. I've given you lots of tips and hints about becoming a good presenter, but I think it really boils down to a few things. You've got to have great language and communication skills. You've got to have confidence in what you're saying. And I think it also helps as well that you really know your presentation and you know the topic well, okay? If you know your presentation, if you've been through the slides before, if you've practiced it, then that's going to help to build your confidence. And it's also going to help you with your communication skills because you know what you want to say and how you want to say it. But these are the most important factors when giving a presentation. So, do you want to develop your language skills and gain the confidence needed for a presentation? You may possess excellent communication skills already, but if you do, how are you going to improve? How are you going to prove that to your employer or a potential employer? And you may feel that your communication skills need improving. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, we recommend, as I said at the beginning, that you take a BEC qualification with us that's really going to prove that you have excellent communication skills and help you to get that great job that you're looking for. And in preparing for BEC, we've got lots of great resources that you can find on our website and also on the BEC app, which has been prepared specifically for our students in India. Do have a look at it. It's really, really good. You can find some more information there and some links to the website where we've got more information. So remember that the BEC qualifications have been designed specifically to help you to improve your communicative competence.
So I'll quickly take you through what is linguist skill. Ian was talking about BEC. BEC is a Cambridge certification, but linguist skill is also a similar certification. Only thing is BEC is fixed at 3 specific levels, while linguist skill is fixed at, it's a free floating test that is available to you, and it is also adoptable in what skill you want to develop. So this Gujarat government has actually chosen linguist skill, which they feel will be more beneficial for the student. So it is a modular test and it's also a free floating test. I'll explain both the terms to you shortly. When I say modular test, the first thing about it being a modular test, the benefit for it is that it can you can take one skill at a time. If you want only to improve your speaking skill, you can take the speaking test. If you want to improve the reading and listening test, only your input skills, you can take the reading test. So normally in many states that we work with now, the governments or the institutions recommend reading and listening skill in the first semester for the students as part of the business communication English test or the semester English exams. You know, you have soft skills, English communication paper. There are different names, but they just mean an essential English paper. So they offer the reading and listening in the first semester. And in the second semester or in the fourth semester, before placement, they do the speaking part. So that is why the government of Gujarat, the scope, has taken all these 3 skills. If you are interested, we can look at writing also. Mansi ma'am will talk about it. The test is available in the business module and the general module. It's a multi-level test. What it means is you would have heard about the CFR at the beginning of the presentation. So if the test is, you could be at any level of CFR and you can take the test and it will give you your level of test. It's like the IELTS in that it is. So if you look at the IELTS, it's a free floating test again. You can be at any level and you can take, it's a multi-level test, we call it in Cambridge. The linguist skill is very similar to it. So you can take one skill and it will tell you which level you are in. If you look at BEC, it's slightly different. It's more fixated into levels. There's a B1 test or a B2 test. You have to know I am at B1 and go and appear for a B1 test. But in linguist skill, you can be at any level. You can be at a basic level. You do it and it'll tell you you are at this level. That's the benefit of linguist skill. Of course, it comes from the University of Cambridge. So the validity, the reliability. When we say impact and practicality, we would never talk about snow in a test because we would understand Indian students wouldn't understand snow. We wouldn't talk about something that is very specific to a region. Our test would be widespread, so students anywhere in the world can understand the test. Again, this is why I said it is the latest of technologies. It's an advanced computer-based test. So people taking the test can, the test, it the test becomes difficult or easier based on your level of language. So if you're doing well, the test becomes easier. If you are doing it, you're struggling to do it, the test questions become easier. I'll show that as a graph. The speaking test is online. It is developed. I mean, your candidates have 8 parts. It's like an interview you do with your computer. The results are also very quick. That's the result speed. It's almost instant for the LR test, the listening and reading. The speaking test, it takes 48 hours to be marked. This is where you will start the test. You will enter a code into this place and you will start the test. This is how the certificate looks. It shows what is your CFR level. It gives you your score, as in the average score that you have scored, and which band of CFR you are at. So this is what I was talking about, auto marking. So if you are answering it well, the exam becomes difficult, increasingly difficult. If you're not answering it well, the exam starts becoming a little easier for you. It's recognized by all these bodies across the world. So many people, whether it's a company, you can see the number of companies that are recognizing it across the globe. You can see there are companies in Portugal, in France, in Brazil, in Argentina, Malaysia that accept it. There are universities that are across in Canada and in Australia that accept this. Of course, there are the government bodies that accept it. Even the Postal Department of Spain has now said, because addresses are in English, people need to learn English and have a certain level of English. The biggest thing is Air France. They recommend this for their students. I'm just going to bring up one slide that has been shared. The pricing of this thing, because many people have been asking us repeatedly about this, and then we will take your questions.
Yeah, Dushna, one thing, please share the link, feedback link, so that...
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am, about that. Okay, yeah. The pricing is here, ma'am. You can take over from here. I will put up the link.
Yeah. Many students ask about the fee structure of scope. For those who wants to appear for lingua skill training, who wants to go through the training and examination, the prices will be, the fees will be 2,700 and the training hours will be 20 hours. CPT training and examination charges are 1150 and training hours will be 16 hours. And if you want to check your proficiency first, so you can go for third thing, that is CPT examination and then lingua skill training and examination. So you can see your progress, where you were and now what is the level of your English. So these are the fee structure, and it has 20 hours training program approximately. So this is our fee structure. Just have a screenshot or photograph of it, and you can contact for further details to Scope, and you can email us also. So this is the fee structure. You are asking for last few days, so here it is.
So you have the number of hours that is available there. You also have the cost that you've been asking us for.
Yes.
So I've
I want to share that yeah, and the fees are very low because the government of Gujarat has taken this initiative, and it is very much low price, and the market price is very high. So we are trying to give students this examination, which is worldwide famous, at very low cost. So take the benefit of this and enroll yourself with Scope and develop your skills in proficiency in English.
I can just add that because I manage the entire West India. So if you look at a state that's almost that shares a borderline with you, Madhya Pradesh, the government also offers this. They've copied Scope in some ways to get there. But what they are offering it at is way above this price. Because these are government bodies, I will not be able to tell you the exact price. but it is almost 1,000 plus rupees more than what Scope is offering to you.
Yes.
So if this is one of the best prices I've seen this exam being offered, the market price is more than 4,500 rupees. So Scope is almost giving it at half the price for you all. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity for you all to take this up and benefit from it. I have put up the feedback link.
Yeah, one candidate is asking about the app to learn Cambridge Assessment English that we have already described. That BEC app is very much helpful to learn English very well. So BEC app is the best. You can go through it and you can have the idea of what is CEPT and Lingua skill, which type of questions are there, and the material you can get.
Kushbu is asking us when the course will start. And we want give exam. What are the process for filling the form?
Yes, just drop a mail to us and we will give you all the information, because where you belong is very much required here, because we have to form a group of batch. We have to form a batch, and then we can conduct the examination as per your location. So just drop a mail and we will revert you.
Yes. There are many thank yous that are coming up. We have one more webinar to go in the series that we've been running over the week. So I'm going to bring back the slide for you to give you Scope's contact details. The Scope contact details. Feel free to reach out to Scope there. They are more than happy to support you.
Yes.
The course, once the course starts, you will have your exam date. So they will, like, if they're talking about, let us say, a 20-hour program, probably it'll be 2 hours a day for 10 days. So 2 weeks. And after that, you will have the exam. So
yes.
you will.
Yeah, Sony Umesh Kumar is asking, he is asking, sometimes we know about how to give presentation, but sometimes on the stage we are shivered and not able to give presentation. So how to gain confidence again and deliver the presentation? As Ian has explained us, first you have to practice it. Practice with your colleagues, practice on your own, practice in the front of mirror, and definitely you will get the confidence. Yeah. So practice and practice. Practice makes man perfect. There is no alternative of practice and hard work. So do it, and one day you will confidently present yourself in front of many people. So all the best.
To be to be honest and tell you a secret, Sony, when I first appeared for my first ever interview, in those days, we didn't have videos and YouTube and all that stuff. It was probably 25 years ago. I don't want to tell you my age, so I'm telling you a random number there. I wasn't told that there would be 4 people in a panel. My people who taught me to go for an interview said there'll be 1 person in front of a panel. So I walked into an interview, and then I saw 4 people to 5 people, and I was shaking, because I didn't know to whom to give my certificate, because you took your certificates as a file, and I was like, I was churning a little on my feet. Then I gave it to one person, and I felt like my tongue had gone inside my neck. They were asking, what is your name? And I'm like, Joshua. It wasn't coming. But today you can see me talking to you all so freely on a webinar platform. If I'm on stage, I'm able to talk. It's because of practice. I have been intimidated and felt very small at times, like Ian said. But it's that you don't give up. You keep trying. And then after some time, this becomes regular, So with my son, I started training him when he was very young. So he's able to do it now. Even though he's just going to go to college, he's much more bolder than me. That's the whole thing. Practice makes you better. I think we should wind up. We've been around for 1.5 hours today. Everybody has spent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much,
Joshua, Manish, and thank you all the participants for joining such a great webinar.